Tonight, we slip behind the velvet rope and into the gilded, smoke-filled, and slightly tragic world of the original royal rebel, Princess Margaret, not the beautiful wave from the balcony, ribbon-cutting kind of royal. Number tonight, we're talking about the chain-smoking, gin-sipping, stay up until 4 in the morning kind of royal. A woman who was born second, lived large, and never quite forgave the universe for the order in which she arrived. The year is 1930. A storm rolls over a cold Scottish castle. The lamps flicker. And the second royal daughter is born into a role nobody quite knows what to do with. She was Margaret Rose, the second daughter of the Duke and Duchess of York, fourth in line to the throne, comfortably tucked away from the crown, free, in theory, to simply be a child. No one in that storm-lashed castle could have guessed that this little girl would spend her entire life being defined by a single unchangeable fact. She had arrived second for the first 6 years of her life. Margaret enjoyed something that would become almost mythical in hindsight, an ordinary, happy childhood. The family lived at a comfortable townhouse in Piccadilly, and later at Royal Lodge in Windsor, in a warm and loving little unit the press affectionately dubbed Us Four. Margaret was the baby, the charmer, the mischievous one with the big blue eyes, who could make her stern father melt with a single cheeky grin. She mimicked the adults, sang at the piano, and delighted in being the center of attention, while her oldest sister, Elizabeth, was already quietly being shaped into something more serious. It was a gilded, gentle world of nannies and nursery teas, and it was about to be shattered completely by a man Margaret barely knew, her uncle. In December of 1936, the unthinkable happened. Margaret's uncle, King Edward VIII, gave up the throne of the British Empire to marry the twice-divorced American Wallis Simpson. In a single stroke of the pen, the crown passed to Margaret's shy, stammering, reluctant father, who became King George VI. Overnight, the cozy life of us four evaporated. Margaret, just 6 years old, is said to have asked what that made her. Now, the answer, unspoken but absolute, would haunt her for the rest of her life. It made her despair. She got the cage without the crown, the duties without the destiny, famous, watched, and photographed, yet given no throne, no real authority, and no clear purpose to justify the scrutiny. By most accounts, Margaret was the more naturally clever of the two sisters, faster, more verbal, more artistically gifted. In a different family with a different birth order, that brilliance might have been cultivated. Instead, it was left largely to entertain dinner parties. A formidable mind handed almost nothing important to do, and restlessness would define her. When the Second World War swept across Europe, the two princesses were sent to live at Windsor Castle, where they spent much of the conflict sheltering behind blackout curtains and reinforced walls. While bombs fell on London, Margaret and Elizabeth put on amateur pantomimes to raise morale, slept with gas masks nearby, and learned to live with the strange suspended dread of wartime. The war ended, the world exhaled, and Margaret emerged from the castle gates as something new and dangerous. A teenage girl with a taste for fun, in a country desperate for glamour. By her late teens and early 20s, she had blossomed into one of the most photographed young women in the world. Famous for her tiny waist, her flawless style, her cigarette holders, and her dazzling, slightly wicked sense of humor. She drank. She danced. She stayed out late at nightclubs with a circle of glamorous young aristocrats the newspapers breathlessly called the Margaret set. She was the royal family's answer to a film star. Decades before anyone used the word celebrity for a princess. To the public, she seemed to have it all. But beneath the sparkle, a problem was forming, one with a name, a uniform, and a wedding ring he had given to somebody else in February of 1952. Margaret's beloved father died in his sleep at the age of 56, worn down by illness and the burden of a crown he had never wanted. For Margaret, it was a devastating personal blow. She had adored him, and his death left her unmoored in a way she would never fully recover from. In her grief, she leaned on the one person who had been quietly, steadily at her side throughout it all. And that was where everything began to go wrong. His name was Peter Townsend, a decorated Royal Air Force war hero and equerry to the late king. He was handsome, gentle, and 16 years older than Margaret. And over the years of working alongside the royal family, he and the young princess had quietly, almost accidentally, fallen in love. There was just one enormous, insurmountable problem. Peter Townsend was a divorced man in the rigid moral world of the early 1950s. With the Church of England firmly opposed to the remarriage of divorced people, a princess marrying a divorce was very nearly unthinkable, especially given that the ghost of Uncle Edward's abdication still hung over the family like smoke. Their love was real, tender, and completely doomed. Margaret was forced into exile, sent abroad for a long, lonely tour of the Commonwealth, while the establishment plotted how to make her forget. When she returned, the choice had been made for her. She would not be allowed to marry the man she loved. She issued a public statement, heartbreakingly polite, in which she renounced him. Choosing duty over the love of her life, the wound never closed. For the rest of her days, friends said she carried the shape of Peter Townsend somewhere inside her. Like a song she could not stop humming. In 1960, she married instead a charismatic photographer named Anthony Armstrong-Jones, the first commoner to marry a king's daughter in 400 years. It began as a fairy tale, glamorous, fashionable, modern. They became the Earl and Countess of Snowdon. They had 2 children, and for a few shining years, they were the most photographed most envied couple in Britain. But the marriage was not what it seemed. Both partners were strong-willed, sharp-tongued, and accustomed to getting their way. When such people fall out, they do not merely sulk, they wound. The barbs between them grew sharper, the silences longer. By the 70s, the fashionable, enviable couple had become a study in unhappy estrangement. Each began to seek elsewhere the affection and admiration they no longer found at home. Then came Mustique, a sun-soaked Caribbean island that became Margaret's private refuge. And there, in 1973, she was photographed on a beach with a man 27 years her junior, a young gardener and aspiring singer named Roddy Llewellyn. The pictures splashed across the world's newspapers. The scandal was seismic. In 1978, Margaret and Anthony divorced, the first divorce